Hello and welcome to another Brawl video. Today we're checking out our first commander with the release of Aetherdrift, and my supporters on Patreon voted on Ketramose, the New Dawn, a 3-mana 4/4 legendary god that has menace, lifelink, and is indestructible. Ketramose, however, cannot attack or block unless there are 7 or more cards in exile, but we also get rewarded for exiling cards whenever 1 or more cards are put into exile from graveyards and or the battlefield during our turn only. We get to draw a card and to lose 1 life. So Ketramose is an incredibly powerful card draw engine in this more controlling exile deck that not only can exile opposing permanents to draw cards, but also has some flicker effects to flicker our own creatures and trigger Ketramose that way as well. And then eventually the goal is to get those 7 cards in exile so we can start attacking and blocking, gaining a life, paying for its own ability. So that's what we're trying to work with. I've split up the deck into a few different categories to help with the breakdown. The initial category here is ways to exile cards from graveyards, because that can also enable Ketramose as long as it happens in our own turn. So we've got lots of cheap artifacts that can repeatedly exile cards from both my graveyard as well as the opponent's graveyard, drawing us cards in the process. Then we've got a boatload of removal that will exile things that are on the battlefield, so we can draw cards with Ketramose as well. Then plenty of creatures with powerful enter the battlefield abilities, so we can hopefully flicker those creatures, exiling them in the process, drawing cards, and impacting the board to keep us alive long enough to leverage all those extra cards. Then we've got the actual flicker effects, often cheap instants that can exile our creatures and return them to the battlefield. Then we've got some additional removal, couple sweepers at 4 mana, since our commander's indestructible, it plays well with 4 mana wrath effects, as well as some other efficient removal spells. Then we've got lots of planeswalkers, including the Kaya planeswalkers, which like to exile stuff, and then the miscellaneous section includes some mana acceleration, as well as Shieldred the Apocalypse, which plays quite well with the card draw from Ketramose, so we don't end up losing any life. And then the new Chrome Mox is also quite exciting, added to Brawl, and we'll see how long that lasts, allowing us to maybe play Ketramose on turn 2 already. So that's the rough breakdown. Now for the deep dive, starting with our graveyard hate, we've got those 1-mana artifacts, including a Ghost Vacuum, can exile a target card from a graveyard, so we can choose whatever we exile, and can also eventually bring creatures back that we've exiled if we pay 6 mana and sacrifice it. Relic of Progenitus leaves it up to the opponent to exile a card of their choice, but we can also target ourselves, and can also pay a mana to exile all cards from graveyards if we need to speed up the process. And then a Scrabbling Claws is pretty similar. And then we've got our Emperor of Bones, which can also exile a card each turn, potentially exiling creatures that we can then reanimate for 1 turn if we adapt the Emperor of Bones, so that's also quite exciting. Then our removal includes, of course, Path to Exile, even though it gives the opponent a basic. In this deck it's synergistic enough that I don't mind running it, but Swords to Plowshares is the better version, since we don't care if our opponent gains a bit of life. Portable Hole is also quite versatile, can also exile opposing enchantments and artifacts besides creatures. Exercise can deal with artifacts, enchantments, or creatures with power 4 or greater. Journey to Nowhere will stick around as an enchantment, exiling an opposing creature when it enters, similar to Ossification, which does require a basic land to enchant, but this can also exile opposing planeswalkers. Parting Gust is both a way to exile opposing creatures if we gift a fish, or just to flicker our own creatures, so I could also put it in this other category. Then a Despark and Vanishing Verse are more classics in black-white. Touch the Spirit Realm we can also channel to flicker our own things, or we can cast it as a 3-mana answer to opposing artifacts or creatures, so once again have that versatility. Skyclave Apparition, also great to flicker with our flicker effects, as we can exile something when it enters, same as the Hover Ship, which we could also crew first if we can only flicker creatures with our cards. Then there's the Anguish the Making, worth paying 3 life to have this as an instant speed answer. And then a Solitude can also evoke it if we have a white card we can pitch, maybe flickering it with the sacrifice trigger on the stack. And then a March of Otherworldly Light, another versatile answer, can exile opposing creatures, artifacts, or enchantments, potentially exiling cards from our hands, which can also speed up the process of attacking with Ketramose. Then our creatures with ETB effects include Helpful Hunter and Companion to draw a card when they enter. Whereas Burglar Rat, Elderfang Disciple, and the Informant can make the opponent discard a card when they enter, and having those cards go to the graveyard then enables some of our graveyard hate to exile those cards and draw a card with Ketramose. And that's why I'm playing these over Yarok's Fenlurker, which can straight up exile a card from the opponent's hand, but that's not gonna trigger Ketramose's ability. And then we've got the Accursed Marauder, making the opponent sacrifice a creature. Aloran can blow up artifacts and enchantments, similar to the Witch Enchanter, which we can also play as a land. Recruit of the Guard can tutor up whatever creature we want with toughness 2 or less, so that's also quite versatile. Can also get our Solitude, for instance. Playcrafter, another way to sacrifice an opposing creature or planeswalker. We've got Grief as a discard effect built into one of these Evoke elementals. Chupacabra will straight up destroy a creature when it enters. Bellhaunt, another way to make them discard while gaining 3, so this one's a little juicier to flicker. Solemn will find an extra land when it enters, drawing a card when it dies. We've got Obsidian, which will naturally flicker itself each turn, enabling Ketramose while draining the opponent for 2, so it's also a lot of fun. Then there's Noxious Gearhulk, which is just a bigger version of Chupacabra, which also gains us life. And then Massacre Worm, a nice way to clean up some smaller creatures while draining the opponent when their creatures die. Then our flicker effects include Cloud Shift at 1 mana, Ephemerate is the better version since it has Rebound. Then Flicker of Fate can technically exile enchantments as well. We've got Phelia, which we can play, hopefully attack with, exiling our own permanents, getting additional +1 counters while re-enabling all those ETB effects. Then we already mentioned Parting Dust and Touch the Spirit Realm. Guardian of Ghirapur, a 3/3 flyer that can flicker an artifact or creature we control, whereas Teleportation Circle is a 4-mana enchantment that can flicker one of those each turn, so that's another nice repeatable flicker effect. Then our other removal includes Fatal Push, can't go wrong with it, especially with plenty of fetch lands to enable Revolt. Bitter Triumph can also straight up remove opposing planeswalkers. Dismembers, quite efficient, can even remove opposing indestructible creatures by giving them -5/-5. We've got Day of Judgment, a Wrath of God, and Damnation as 4-mana sweepers that won't destroy my own Ketramose, which is why I'm not playing Toxic Deluge, which if it gives -4/-4 would also remove my own commander. Then our planeswalkers include Kaya, Urza of Usurper, can exile cards from graveyard or non-land permanents in play with mana value 1 or less. We've got the Wandering Emperor, exiling tapped creatures. Kaya, Spirit's Justice, can also surveil 2, exile a card from graveyard, drawing with Ketramose. Can also make spirit tokens, or exile both a creature we control and one the opponent controls. Kaya the Inexorable can straight up exile target non-land permanents, so it's not restricted to creatures, and the Ghost Form counters are also quite synergistic with our various creatures. Then there's the Eternal Wanderer, which can also flicker our own creatures with the +1, can make double striking Samurai or essentially Wrath the board, leaving us with Ketramose. And then Kaya Intangible Slayer, also an excellent finisher, draining the opponent for 3 each turn, can draw cards, or can also exile opposing creatures or enchantments, and then we'll gain control of those in the form of a 1/1 spirit token. And then our miscellaneous section, as we mentioned, includes Chrome Mox, so that we can potentially play Ketramose on turn 2. Sentinel, just a good turn 1 play to start taxing the opponent. Alotho, if we double spell, can also reward us with additional treasure tokens. Signet is also worth including, and Shieldred can offset some of the life loss from Ketramose, gaining us 2 life whenever we draw. And then our mana base includes lots of fetch lands, not because we're in desperate need for mana fixing, even though it is still useful there, but also to fill the graveyard for our various graveyard hate artifacts, so we have a steady supply of cards in graveyard to draw with Ketramose. Boshuka Bog, another utility land that can also maybe draw us a card. The channel lands can also offer more interaction. And then we've got Phyrexian Tower, maybe sacking some of the cheaper creatures for additional mana. Hive, a creature land that can also exile stuff from graveyards, and then plenty of black-white dual lands, including the Shadowy Backstreet, which we can also find with our fetch lands like Polluted Delta, even if it's off-color, still worth playing here. And then, of course, Godless Shrine, another dual land with multiple basic land types that we can find with some of these rare fetch lands. And then Urborg, also recent addition, turning all lands into swamps. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Phelia, a Flicker deck. So we want lots of cheap removal. March counts. The rest of my hand may not be at its best, but I actually don't hate it, since Marauder can help fill the graveyard for Emperor of Bones. Soul Warden we can potentially ignore, but I guess it's gonna get caught by the Marauder next turn. And the Norn's Fetchling has Toxic 1. Opponent gets a Plains. Alright, so pretty good in the face of Marauder, sadly. But what's the alternative? Play Emperor of Bones, just so we can block. But yeah, I'll just play Marauder since it's not getting any better. Plan is to play Ketramose next turn. And does our opponent keep up mana for Phelia? And Jolted Awake brings back their creature. Okay. And then they still have mana for Phelia. Which, if it flickers what's in play, it's not a disaster. But they might have scarier things in hand. Finding Wrath of God's not bad, since that can reset the board for us. And just gotta hope they can't exile Ketramose in the meantime. Because it would be nice to curve Wrath into Obsidat. Ketramose resolves. And there's Phelia. So we'll see what they try and flicker. If it's just Fetchling, that's fine. It's gonna be a Roaming Throne first. Well, this Wrath of God just got even more exciting. Goes for Roaming Throne. They will still return end of turn, so they wouldn't be safe from the Wrath. Yeah, I guess they might have wanted to switch the order potentially if they wanted to trigger Fetchling twice. Although then they would have had to name Phyrexian or Insects, and they probably want to keep naming Dog. Either way, we're gonna say goodbye to all those creatures. And then hopefully play Obsidat next turn. Could also see a world where we want to keep up March to answer Phelia. Our opponent has had enough of Ketramose, even though it's not drawn us any cards. Could leave Journey in play and then March to exile it. Might be a little cheaper than having to pay 5 mana. So I'll decline. Might be risky. Now Restoration. So yeah, what I can do now is March and play Emperor of Bones. Ketramose is back. And then with Restoration they could eventually get something cheap back with mana value 2 or less. So I guess Fetchling makes the most sense, and then save Roaming Throne for next turn. Find our own Journey, it's only fair. Opponent gets back Soul Warden, I don't mind. Ooh, the Inner Sun, that could be good. Hits Gandalf. So probably want to exile that. Sword's also a decent answer. So is it risky to just play Obsidat here? Or do we just Journey Gandalf and call it a day? Because I can Burglar Rat as well. Yeah, this seems efficient enough. Draw Swamp. Not in a hurry to sword Soul Warden. Could of course still use Emperor of Bones to get a Roaming Throne back, but no, I'll just play this, and then next turn we can maybe double spell. A Grief may not be all that useful anymore, since the opponent's close to empty-handed. And then we'll still get to draw here. Chupacabra. So it feels like we're taking control over this game. There's still the Inner Sun to worry about, but I think we can handle it. And then can pretty easily deal with what's in play. What does our opponent discover? A Surveyor, which can ramp. Yeah, Swords to Plowshares is kind of our emergency answer to something scary. So don't want to waste it. Could also decide to adapt Emperor of Bones, so we get Roaming Throne for a turn. So I can name, I guess, God. But yeah, is that our plan? I guess I could then still play Obsidian, so this triggers twice. Yeah, that's certainly an option. So, sure, let's do that before we trigger Emperor of Bones. So that we draw even more. And name not Dog, but God. Then we can maybe wait on playing Obsidots. Exile something from their graveyard. Could have also exiled something from my graveyard, but nothing seemed too exciting. So now we get to draw 2, thanks to Roaming Throne. And we'll see if we find something better than Obsidots. Since it would be nice to keep up Swords. And Gearhulk can play that next turn. And Disciple could get their last card once again. So Roaming Throne may as well attack, since we're gonna lose it end of turn. Keep Emperor back on defense, since our opponent's got a life total advantage here. And then maybe for now it's just Chupacabra, keep up Swords, or we can Disciple, even though their last card could be removal. Just a land. Alright, so I don't think I Swords just to draw 2 cards here. Still get to draw 2 on the way out. And there's Phelia. So nothing too scary that they can flicker. Can even channel Iganjo now too. And then maybe next turn we'll try Obsidian. Seal from Existence. Might go for Journey to Nowhere to get Gandalf back. They might want to get rid of Emperor of Bones so I don't get to draw that many cards, or just Ketramose itself. Okay. Probably worth going back to the command zone now. Can still channel for 3 mana. So you get rid of Phelia. But they will get to exile something else here. I guess that was the upside of leaving Ketramose underneath the seal. They wouldn't have been able to flicker it for free. I think we'll manage. So now they probably want to free Gandalf. And then I can still next turn replay Ketramose and Swords it. Or just Chupacabra. Alright, never mind, opponent gets rid of Emperor. So now there are 7 cards in exile. Ooh, Witch Enchanter is a nice hit. Destroying Journey. Alright, so we do have some problems to deal with. I wouldn't mind another sweeper here to clean up. Phelia costs how much? Since it's hiding behind the opponent's avatar. Cost 4 more, so it costs 6 total, so they can't play it right now. Playcrafter not looking too exciting. I suppose we can Gearhulk Gandalf for now. Don't have to worry about Phelia flickering the Witch Enchanter just yet. Which could otherwise blow up the Gearhulk. So yeah, it's basically the Inner Sun keeping the opponent in the game at this stage. So we're hoping to find our own artifact removal. It's going to be a while before we actually end the game because of Soul Warden. Now could be a good turn for Ketramose if we want to Swords Phelia end of turn. Opponent found a Smithy. That also goes pretty hard. 7/7 token. That will only get bigger. But we found Kaya. Can Kaya exile artifacts? It does not, just creatures and enchantments. But I guess I can exile the Enchanter, which in turn destroys the Inner Sun. Yeah, I don't think I can wait on Ketramose. Need to deal with it now.
I'll see this through till the end.
And hope they didn't draw an instant speed flicker effect. That works. Destroy the Inner Sun. And then currently, I guess our opponent needs to tap how many things? 5 untapped artifacts and or creatures. So yeah, they could transform the smithy here. Maybe a reason to Swords Phelia end of turn. Even though this wasn't really an emergency. But yeah, if it prevents them from transforming this for a turn, we can maybe keep it under control. I guess never mind, they can still tap the artifact itself. Although they won't get any tokens this turn at least. So the game goes on. Still have Kaya. And we can finally redeploy Ketramose as well. Okay. So this is 5 mana to redeploy. So I could still Chupacabra their token. Kaya is happy to probably draw cards. Alright, Ghost Vacuum represents additional card advantage. Although let's Chupacabra first. There's Phelia. And can maybe attack for 1 in the air. Phelia might be looking to exile the Seal from Existence again. Ooh, Kozilek. That's unexpected. So now they can potentially counter stuff. I guess Kaya can still exile it. Novice Inspector. Alright, so opponent's got a few more cards to work with. At least we dealt with their Inner Sun. Swords means Ketramose is now online. And our opponent tries to attack Kaya, but we've got 4 blockers now. They maybe didn't take that into account. Although Phelia can also flicker one of my blockers. So they might still go for it just to prevent Kaya from minusing on Kozilek. If they flicker Seal, I will get my Emperor back. They're just gonna remove my token. So I do get to block. And then Chupacabra, I'm probably not gonna flicker anytime soon. This looks good. Kaya's still alive. Exile Kozilek, so I don't have to worry about counter spells. Get our baby Kozilek, which we can also put to use. And then now we need to clean up the opponent's board a little bit. How do we want to proceed? Opposite odds still looks good. Can Ghost Vacuum see what we draw first. Might want to leave creatures in the opponent's graveyard in case I ever get my Emperor of Bones back. And draw Fetch Land. Could always Ossification the Soldier. Does not trigger Ketramose since it's not an actual card. And then, yeah, Playcrafter's not looking too exciting. So it might be Helpful Hunter into opposite odds. And hit you for 4. So I can counter a 3-drop. And draw a card. Okay. I guess I needed the Archway to cast Kozilek in the first place. Now Immortal Sun, shutting down more Planeswalkers, but Touch the Spirit Realm is an answer. So that's not the end of the world. But yeah, this Barracks is proving to be a problem. Bodyguard I might have been fine countering with a Playcrafter actually. Kind of forgot to use my Kozilek. But that's alright. And a Teleportation Circle can flicker stuff. So yeah, opponent managed to empty their hand that turn. Can probably still take it. Start by removing Immortal Sun. Opponent goes for Ketramose. Do I send it back to the command zone? Yeah, that's a good question. I guess we do. Yeah, countering Bodyguard would have worked out a bit better. Gotta contain the opponent's card advantage. Need to find an answer for Bodyguard. Get another try here. Yeah, I don't think I'm getting my Emperor of Bones back anytime soon. My own Phelia. No good attack with Obsidots. Alright, Eternal Wanderer is a reset button. Spellbinder can see what's incoming, but doesn't really stop it. Do I play Phelia now? I guess I do. We'll see if they want to still flicker Bodyguard to exile Ketramose, or if they change their plan. Gotta chump the 10/10. Phelia costs 8 more mana, so they can still cast it here end of turn. Opponent swings for defenses. And then... yeah, this is probably happening. Could still block the Bodyguard, then our opponent sacks it. But then they can't play Phelia anymore. So that might be okay. Their opponent lets the Bodyguard go. Opponent drew into a power plant. Activates Henge. And finds a Mithril Coat. Doesn't help against our Eternal Wanderer. Okay. And then flicker Spellbinder maybe. Recruiter can find artifact removal. Once the board is clear, Playcrafter looks better. Bojuka Bog can also draw some more cards. Attack first with Phelia, flickering Obsidots. Yeah, that makes the most sense. So Phelia's gonna die one way or another. Ketramose has Menace. Opponent's gotta double block it. And I'll keep Ketramose.
Make
You keep 1/1. And then I don't mind just playing the Recruiter here. Finding an answer to Teleportation Circle. A Loran makes sense. And Obzot is back. So that can protect our Wanderer. Opponent draws. Should be able to handle the barracks now. Ooh, Panharmonicon, more duplication effects. And a birth. Alright. That's all manageable, I think. They can still activate Henge, so they are getting a lot of value out of their lanes. That's a department where we don't have a lot of interaction. Could maybe include Field of Ruin to blow those up. But we're still doing okay. Combat Thresher is great here with Panharmonicon and Circle, but I guess they're a mana short of casting it. Our opponent could still flicker Mithril Coat, but I guess there's no legendary creatures to suit up. Can flicker my Recruiter. That seems like good value. Although flickering their soldier token's also a decent answer. Ephemerates, also more fun. So let's start blowing up some artifacts and enchantments here, shall we? Teleportation Circle, although never mind, I guess Barracks is an artifact as well. So could start there. Let's deal with 4 mana things first. Again, Ephemerates, a Loran. And blow up Panharmonicon. But yeah, we'll get to the barracks eventually. Is it time for Bujuka Bog? Maybe Ghost Vacuum first. Find a companion. Still not really incentivized to play Crafter here. Guardian can flicker Loran once again. Alright, I think we're doing it now. Blow up your barracks. And Exercise could also come in handy. Eventually maybe getting back our Emperor Bones, but for now, can go ahead and attack. Maybe not worth it to trade opposite dots. Opponent takes it, and sure, I guess I'll play Lotho. Get a bunch more triggers. Recruiter can search up Solitude, maybe. Could have also gone for Skyclave to get rid of Mithril Coats, but time to say goodbye to the land. Exile Obsidots. We're halfway through the deck here as well. And can discard some lands. Opponent's not giving up. Although they've already drawn their Kozilek. Not sure if there's an Ulamog in there too. Henge finds a Lembas. A healthy snack. And Ossification, sure. What are we exiling? My Planeswalker, probably. Otherwise I can flicker Loran and just get it back. So we still have our Exercise to get it back, potentially. Could see a 7 mana Thresher or an end of turn Phelia. 6, 7, 8, 9. I guess we're going for Lembas. Well, this game has been pretty awesome. Lots of back and forth, trying to contain the opponent's card draw engines, which were getting out of hand at some point. But Ketramose has claimed 28 victims. A Wrath of God, fair enough. was bound to happen. Can still channel Takenuma to get creatures back. But Ketramose sticks around. I'll make it opposite dot then. Hit you for 4, maybe Ghost Vacuum first. Still not too afraid of decking. Alright, so we have options. Could always go for Recruiter, which gets a Witch Enchanter. Could go for Kaya Intangible Slayer, which is never bad. Get this in play. Might be at a point where we just plus a bunch. Have enough cards in hand. And then get our Planeswalker back. Massacre Worm could be fun too. Anything I want to flicker? Probably not, just make a Samurai. And play a land and pass. Unless we want to just play Massacre Worm for funsies. We can wait to maybe get something with it, keep up Solitude. And at this point the fetch lines can go. Opponent up to 27. So even an indestructible Phelia, we can still Massacre Worm. What does Henge find? That's probably the first miss. And now Thresher, the 3-mana version, so still within range of a Massacre Worm at least. And no mana to replay Phelia. Costs 10, we can finally see it clearly. And ooh, Elspeth Conquers Death is a good one. Can exile my Eternal Wanderer, I suppose. Parting Gust only exiles creatures. Opponent wants their Immortal Sun back instead. I can flicker enchantments, so I guess that works. So just do a quick switcheroo. Suit up Thresher. We're gonna Massacre Worm. Opposite that is back. Skyclave's not bad either. And then Kaya keeps draining for 3. Can start attacking. Exile Thresher. And the game should be almost over here. Okay, probably fine to pass a turn, no need to overextend. Non-creature spells are taxed by 2. With the amount of decisions we had to make this game, I'm sure there's some suboptimal plays we've made along the way. But that's all part of the experience. The important thing in these longer games is often just to form a plan. In this case it was shutting down the opponent's card draw engines, like Immortal Sun, like the Inner Sun. And that's what we were working towards, and that's what we managed to succeed at. And then along the way we might have to reformulate our game plan a few times when things happen and more problems arise. But the through line this game was definitely shut down their card draw engines, let Ketramose do the rest. And we know our deck has plenty of answers to artifacts and enchantments as well. And yeah, that'll do it. So what a game to start things out. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the play, facing the Jolly Balloon Man. So also a deck that tries to flicker or exile their own creatures. We'll be trying to exile them in a different way. And this hand seems fine. Probably going to play this as a land. Although we could start with turn 1 Relic and postpone that decision. And then if our opponent plays something worth exiling, we can play Journey, if not, play this tapped. Right, just going to be a tap land. So we can play this tapped, save ourselves some life. Nothing to exile with Relic at the moment, that's where fetch lands are useful, kind of hoping our opponent plays their own. As we draw another Sweeper. Those should be effective in the matchup. Possible our opponent's got their own removal that exiles. Hopefully they don't. Our opponent untaps. Don't expect to see the Balloon Man until they have something in play that they can create a token, but nope, opponent runs it out right away. So we'll go for Journey, keep up D-Spark. Could have maybe waited to play my land in case we draw fetch land with Ketramose. A Sword's not bad either, but again want to use it in my turn, so we get to draw a card. Only want to use it in the opponent's turn if it's an emergency. Solemn would still be efficient to D-Spark right now, but we don't have anything else going on next turn, so we can take our time. And then Solitude is also an option, just to put an extra threat in play. Do we prefer that over D-Spark? D-Spark can maybe exile enchantments as well. So I don't actually mind Solitude. And draw a card. And Chupacabra, also good to flicker, although currently missing those flicker effects. So we've got removal for days. Our opponent's deck, playing Balloon Man, is going to have lots of creatures. So yeah, don't hate my chances. Caretaker's Talent, sadly we cannot D-Spark, so that's pretty good. Dodges all our removal spells. Flicker of Fates can flicker Solitude, but there's nothing to get rid of. So yeah, a pretty awkward turn, all things considered. If I do Flicker of Fate, then Relic can also exile it to draw some more cards. Our opponent's gonna Lightning Helix. Yeah, I guess I could now at least Relic the Helix to draw. Do we want to save Solitude by flickering it? I don't think we care. Also means more food in the graveyard in general. Alright, so we can maybe channel this as well. Getting back Solitude at the very least. Solitude it is, and then now there's more food in graveyards. Flicker of Fates can also exile enchantments, so we could flicker Journey to Nowhere with it. Carnosaur's not bad. Gets to discover. Finds a Ajani. Alright, at least now there's plenty of creatures for us to play with. Talon draws a card. Take my turn. Something fun we could do is to evoke Solitude and then Flicker of Fate to keep it on the battlefield. Yeah, that's not a bad move here. So let me go full control just so I don't mess this up. Evoke, pitching one of our many sweepers. Exile Carnosaur. That resolves. Ketramose triggers. Draw a card. Flicker of Fate, Solitude. And then now we probably want to exile a Johnny. Finding a Gearhulk. And an Apparition, which can now exile the talent. Alright, so we're doing it. Six cards in exile. A Relic can make it 7. And a land can go. So now Ketramose can attack. Got plenty of lands. I'll maybe wait on the Surveil. Alright, so we're finally getting better traction in this game, drawing more cards. And it's not going to take long for us to build up an army. Scoundrel discarding a land, helps our Relic. Could have also played an untap land, just in case we need to exile the Relic. But if we draw more Graveyard Hates artifacts, I guess it's good to have some cards left to exile, since Ketramose is already enabled. Opponent's gonna Braid Solitude instead of the Relic. And we'll take 2. Can start with Esper Sentinel, just to see if there's a response. Exile card from their graveyard. Finding a Ghost Vacuum, that's more card advantage. And I suppose we could Chupacabra. And wait on Gearhulk. Find Path to Exile, so we've got all the cheap removal spells. But Chupacabra will do. At this point, maybe destroy the cat. And attack. Might be worth it to leave up a removal spell just in case. Smashing. Paying the tax. Removing 2 of our creatures, that's fine. Opponent gets a 3/3 token. And I'll take 1. Alright, Kaya's not bad either. So I could go for Gearhulk, remove your illusion. After we draw some more cards. Or do we prefer Kaya? Let's play the Gearhulk, that can actually apply some pressure. Still don't want to waste my Swords to Plowshares on a Scoundrel. Suppose I could draw into a Cloud Shift. And then flicker the Gearhulk. Don't know if I want to do that now, however. Would draw me an extra card. Might demoralize my opponent enough. Sure. Flickering a Gearhulk just to remove a 1/1. And then Kaya can plus putting a Ghost Form counter on the Gearhulk, so it can return to hand if they don't remove it right now. Opponent's still at 24, so we've got a long way to go. Mondrak can be quite good with the Balloon Man. Fable doubling the tokens, so that's where having Swords or Path available could have exiled Mondrak in response. But I think we'll be alright. Found the new Chrome Mox, that's kind of exciting. Although we're probably not gonna need the extra mana too much. So, Despark Mondrak for starters. And then we want to Loran blow up Fable. And I don't mind sacking Sentinel to get Kaya in play. Or we could just Crow Mox at this point, maybe that's worth it. Pitch our other Sweeper. Play Kaya. Ghost form on the Gearhulk. And then we still have these we can activate. Got an Embarrassment of Riches. So their opponent can double block, but they're just gonna take it. And I should use these now if I still want to draw. Got plenty of life to work with. So their opponent does get to make a bunch of mana here. If I draw another black card, I could evoke Grief just to check out if the coast is clear, but it's going to be a Wandering Emperor. So yeah, they do get a chance to do something powerful. It's going to be a Balloon Man and an Authority. Now we get to draw Shieldred. Copy their token, which flies. Make a bunch of treasure. Could wait to find a flicker effect for Loran, but I'm okay just taking the trade as well. Find an exercise for Authority. Might want to play Shieldred first. Just so we get to gain some more life. And we're just going off here, finding another artifact to draw some more cards. Surprise our opponent still hanging in there. Draw more cards. Accursed Marauder is pretty fun too. Alright, let's see here. Kaya, exile Balloon Man. Marauder can clear the Shaman token. Could also Grief to see what they're holding. It was Mothra, aka Luminous Broodmoth. Attack. And then Scrabbling Claws can exile Broodmoth. Trigger Shieldred, pass a turn. Opponent falls to 4. And we've got a lot of removal left in hand. Our opponent can perhaps find a way to remove Kaya. Not quite. And our opponent's gonna go out swinging. And as the dust settles, there's 18 cards in exile, so Ketramose put in a ton of work. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing a Gretchen ramp deck, often paired with lots of counter spells as well. But on the play, we can try to sneak in Sentinel, and then if we resolve Ketramose with a Ghost Vacuum, that's a solid card draw engine. So we'll see if we can resolve our commander right away. Or if our opponent's gonna keep up a counter spell. At least if we force the issue, Sentinel might draw us a card. But our opponent's got the Halfling. Alright, could make them discard now. Wait on Ghost Vacuum. And a River's Rebuke would have been pretty effective later. Alright, so with this mana they cannot cast a double blue counterspell, so they might be tapping out for Gretchen. And then we get to have Ketramose. Blue could still bounce it back to our hand at some point. But I'm happy to put it on the battlefields. And then with Ghost Vacuum and Fetch Lanes, we've got a steady stream of cards we can exile to draw cards. Flare of Cultivation. Does our opponent pay the 1? They do. And then I think we want to prioritize exiling the lands here. I think this is still better than playing a Solemn. Because lands, especially fetch lands, our opponent can keep getting back. Alright, did not draw anything relevant. Do have to exile them in our turn if we want to draw the card with Ketramose. Otherwise we could have waited for the opponent to maybe target a land and then exile it. So not the most exciting turn here, but we've established our card draw engine. Opponent's got a Harrow. Pay the 1. Alright, they let us draw swords. Decent answer to Gretchen. Still want to wait to untap here, so we exile something in our turn. Ooh, Primeval Titan. That's definitely worth answering as well. So our opponent's pretty far ahead on mana. Hopefully they can't convert that into anything meaningful. Although at the very least with Gretchen they can draw cards. So yeah, it's going to be tricky. But if we can just keep answering all their creatures one by one, we'll maybe eventually get there. Take my turn. Ossification, also a decent answer. Start with Ghost Vacuum. Get rid of... Maybe at this point, there's no point in going for fetch lands anymore, since they have so many. And then we can Ossification Gretchen, since they will probably send it back to the command zone anyway. And then we can Swords Primeval Titan. And still have Phelia to maybe flicker Solemn next turn. Alright, so decent turn. Can also flicker my own Ossification, I suppose. Kogla's potentially a problem. Finds my Sentinel. And if that attacks, it can also blow up my Ghost Vacuum. And there's Gretchen. Okay. So, probably still in favor of flickering Ossification. They will get to eat Phelia, so ideally we draw into a removal spell for Kogla. Guardian of Girapur can flicker the Informant as well, make them discard, and then still draw a card here. Alright, so looks like Phelia might have to attack anyway. Could also sack it to Phyrexian Tower, but there's nothing I can really do at instant speed with the 2 mana. So yeah, I think we're just going for Ossification, and then we'll see what's next. Might still draw into an instant speed answer. Alright, 7 mana Kaya's not bad. So Phelia down. Could also play Solemn, sacking the Guardian just to add a bit more mana for next turn. Don't hate it. Could even cast a Day of Judgment here. Although we are about to exile Kogla, so that seems excessive. And then we get our Informant back, opponent discards, and we get Ossification exiling Kogla. So still a decent turn, I would say. Ketramose draws once again. Although their opponent does get to untap with Gretchen, which can draw them more cards. Next turn we should be able to attack with Ketramose as well. Provisioner can make more mana with the treasures. Pretty good combo with Gretchen. So right now the plan might be Kaya, try to exile Provisioner, and then I can still play a fetch land afterwards. Solitude could also exile Provisioner, so we have options. Let's start here. Yeah, I mean, they could have a counterspell in hand by now. I think we still try to resolve Kaya. That works.
I was expecting a more impressive enemy. First you, then your ghost.
And then I can still play my fetch land, making some treasure tokens. Play Hunter, draw card. Ketramose can attack. Small consideration for Solitude on Gretchen, but if they spend their turn activating it, I don't think we care too much. Oh, Lumra, alright, so yeah, that's why we needed to prioritize lands in Graveyard. Still pretty good here. We'll wait until our turn to get rid of it. Yeah, could have been worse without a Ghost Vacuum at least. Gretchen activates. So that's one big bear. That could gain me a lot of life now with a Noxious Gearhulk. Could also play my own fetch lands, minus Kaya, get Lumra back on my side of the battlefield. Maybe that's still better actually, even though it means giving up Kaya when we don't have to. So maybe we'll just keep taking up Kaya for now. And then Gearhulk still gains us a boatload of life. Can dismember Gretchen to make them replay it. And then Kaya will just +2 at this point. We've drawn enough cards.
Your time's almost.
Attack with everyone but 1/1s. And I guess I haven't used my Ghost Vacuum yet. Probably want to exile Lumra now. And then if we decide to pay 6 for Ghost Vacuum, we could still get access to it. Pass it back. So it's 6 mana to replay Gretchen. They could still activate twice, but they need to answer the board. Gretchen activates. And they look pretty dead to me now. And yeah, opponent scoops it up, can easily clear a path and attack for the win. Awesome, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, facing an Amalia life gain deck. They also have Lurrus as companion, so Graveyard Hate could be useful, and we have Emperor Bones, but we don't have any real removal. And it's gonna take a while for me to flicker Solemn with Ephemerate to get some card advantage going. So this hand might be a mulligan. This I like a little bit better. Can always play the Enchanter as a land. Now we probably don't have to. So I'll just fetch a Surveil land early. And there's Amalia. At some point we can exercise it or Bitter Triumph. prefer playing Ketramose before we exile any of their creatures. Take one. But we're definitely going to start out on the back foot this game. Vanishing Verse seems good enough. So this turn could play the Informants. Opponent discards a Soulmender. And a Cutthroat's next. Yeah, I guess D-Spark doesn't have any targets in this matchup, so that was potentially a reason to mulligan once again. But I'll take it for now. Swords is quite good as well. I will have to take 3 damage to play Ketramose, so that hurts. Now I can maybe trump with the Informants, and then next turn we can start exiling and drawing. Reclamation can return a creature from the graveyard to their hand. So that's where exiling is also useful. And Cure, another way to get stuff back out of the graveyard. Opponent declines. Well, a Day of Judgment, I guess, could work too for now. Even their opponent just played the Reclamation. Could always Vanishing Verse the Reclamation. Opponent kept their commander in the graveyard, so they're maybe planning to get it back right now. Okay, so step 1, probably Vanishing Verse Reclamation. Or we could exercise it and keep Vanishing Verse for something else, although I cannot Vanishing Verse Amalia, so that's the tricky part. But sure, I guess we can exercise here using Phyrexian Tower. See what we draw. Ooh, opponents got their own Swords to Plowshares. Alright, I guess we'll draw on the way out. Return the favor. Find a relic, that would have been excellent. Can still, of course, play it. And then, yeah, I guess Ketramose getting exiled during our own turn also draws us a card, as it enables its own ability. So that's pretty neat. Should probably use this now. And then we can always sacrifice it in response to any graveyard recursion. So our opponent's got to rebuild. If we can keep Relic in play to draw us cards, that's probably better. Alright, opponent's going to get in with a Fortress. So that's going to hurt a little bit. But it's still manageable. So I guess I won't be able to play Ketramose and keep up an answer for the Fortress. So does it mean I just sack Relic, so this can potentially block next turn? Yeah, I guess so. Anguish the Making cost me some life. But now there's plenty of cards in exile, so Ketramose can start attacking. One unknown in hand. And our opponent scoops it up. Wow, I'll take it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Urza, blue-white artifacts. This hand's got some answers to artifacts, quite a few of them. Sure, I'll try it. Question is whether we play the Enchanter as a tap land, or if we save it as a 4-mana answer, when we already have March and Touch the Spirit Realm, which can also exile artifacts. I think I still maybe hang on to it. The 3 life loss probably doesn't matter too much in this matchup. Can start by surveilling. Try and hit some more land drops. And then hope they don't have a counterspell for Ketramose. Signet seems fine. Can also test the waters out with a recruiter. Opponent does have 2 mana up, including double blue. So yeah, don't feel the need to play my commander yet. Try recruiter. And it's just counterspell, so it could have been worse if they had mana drain. Opponent plays a Mind Stone. Could try to march it, or we can just untap, play Ketramose, hope they don't have a 2 mana answer, because it could even have a 1 mana counterspell like Wash Away, so then me marching the Mind Stone doesn't really help unless our opponent sacks Mind Stone in response, which I guess would make sense, but then I'm using up a lot of resources here, because I have to pitch a card to the march, so I don't think that's worth it. And then we'll just play Ketramose, since if I play the Enchanter, they just sack Mind Stone in response, so it's not all that effective. If they counter, we'll try again next turn. Opponent had the Wash Away, so blowing up Mind Stone by itself wouldn't have helped. Back to the command zone, and hopefully next turn we get to resolve it. A repurposing Bay, alright, with 2 mana left to sack a Mind Stone. So they get a 3-drop, but now the coast is maybe clear. Opponent gets a synthesizer. Yeah, we should be able to deal with that. Can fetch now if we'd like. Could also consider marching something now, pitching Kaya since we're pretty far from casting it, just so the board is a bit more under control. And then I guess we could have even gotten rid of the Seed of the Synod, now that I think about it. But yeah, we'll get rid of one of these. Start with maybe Synthesizer. And then now we can resolve Ketramose. Ghost Vacuum is also a nice one alongside it. So it might be worth it to play the Enchanter, just so we can start drawing a turn sooner. And get rid of an artifact. Phelia, good if we find more creatures to flicker. So I'm hoping they don't have too many artifacts they can play and still sacrifice with a Bay. That would be problematic. Solve the equation, could technically get a removal spell for Ketramose, and yeah, opponent gets Swords to Plowshares. Well, at least we can still try to replay it for 7 mana, and we did draw the land, so that's our plan. And activate Ghost Vacuum while we can. Get rid of Swords. So the game continues. Still have Touch the Spirit Realm to exile an artifact. And Braided Nets doesn't really stop us, but they could upgrade it into a 4-mana artifact. And what's it gonna be? Probably need to touch the Spirit Realm, the Repurposing Bay itself now. Possible they find another answer to Ketramose. It's gonna be a 1 ring. Alright. So they didn't cast it, so they don't have protection. So let me start here. Find Kaya, that can also exile stuff. So maybe that's still the priority. Play Kaya, and then exile the 1 ring. And I guess we still have mana for Touch the Spirit Realm on Repurposing Bay, or I can leave up the channel ability to flicker Ketramose in case it gets answered. But I guess with 6 cards in exile, it's probably worth it to just play another one, get 7 cards, so this can start attacking. And then, yeah, opponent's pretty far behind now. Awesome, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Dionus, Elvish Archdruid. So, when elves become tapped, they untap and get a +1 counter. Alright, pretty scary. So an elf deck means we'll have plenty of creatures to exile and draw cards with. Loran may not be at our best. Parting Gust and Skyclave are decent. Is this good enough to keep? Yeah, I'll try it. They might still have an artifact or enchantment along the way. Windswept Heath can fetch basic planes. This can fetch a backstreet. Alright, and there's an enchantment already for us to remove. So backstreet Surveil. And a relic is potentially card draw engine with Ketramose, so I don't hate it. Can always target our own graveyard to exile a fetch land. Gonna do that next turn. And then Kaya is already an option, but I think we just want to start drawing as soon as possible. Target myself, exile, draw. And then we can fetch another shock land end of turn, perhaps. We've got answers for the opponent's commander, for now Visionary. And they're gonna hit for 1. So fetch a Godless Shrine. If I go for Kaya, we might have it survive. Although, let's see. Yeah, I guess they would get a +1 counter on the Druid, so it would actually hit for 2. So yeah, playing Kaya is not the safest right now, since it wouldn't be protected. So instead I like Skyclave, Exile Visionary, and then... I guess I won't have additional white mana for Parting Gust, but a Portable Hole works. So that was lucky. And then Relic can still target myself. Play a Hive. Unless we want a Ghost Vacuum. Sure. Fetch. Play Ghost Vacuum. Exile my own fetch land, draw card. Have to do it in my turn to trigger Ketramose. And now we already have 5 cards in exile, so next turn we might be able to attack with it. We're just drawing more removal than our opponent can deploy threats at this point. And now Kaya is going to be better protected as well. And there's Dionus. And then I'm liking Spirit's Justice, Surveilling, probably putting both in graveyard, because that lets Ketramose attack. And then probably leave up Parting Gusts.
Didn't see a door, so I let myself in.
Ooh, Obsidian is pretty tempting to keep on top. But if I only exile the 1 card, then Ketramose doesn't get to attack. I guess there's Parting Gust, but then they send this back to the command zone. So... alright, I'll give up on Obsidian, sorry. Exile this, and then Ghost Vacuum can still maybe get Obsidian back in some form. And then Parting Gust, gifting a fish. Could also attack first, but this seems okay. And this goes back to the command zone, so we're back down to 7 cards in exile. Yeah, I suppose with casting the removal spell I could have exiled that. And then we still get to 7 cards total. Now Solitude, we can also play at instant speed. So things are going well, you could say. Our opponent's not giving up. 5 mana. But never mind, our opponent explodes. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Karametra, God of Harvest, so green-white ramp deck. We have a little bit of creature removal, can flicker Skyclave. Yeah, this seems functional. And then I'm gonna want to fetch a basic for Ossification. Turn 1, Lenor Elves. So we're gonna be a little bit behind. Phelia could be decent. Yeah, I'll keep it. We have a decent amount of removal, so it's not going to be too difficult to keep the board clear. At which point, Phelia can be quite good at flickering Skyclave or Informant. So now I have to decide if I want to exile the Lenor Elves. I think so. Just because that allows us to maybe tap out for our commander next turn. And our opponent won't have the mana to necessarily play Karametra already. If they play something scary, I might have to Skyclave. Alright, Knot of Autumn can blow up my Ossification, so that's too bad. So now do I feel comfortable playing Ketramose? If our opponent does play Karametra next turn, I guess I won't be able to exile it, since this is only non-token creatures. And Skyclave misses 5 drops. But I won't be able to stop Karametra forever. So maybe we do take a turn off playing Ketramose, and then hopefully we'll find different answers to Karametra. And Guardian can flicker our own creature, maybe. So here, what makes sense? I could play Companion in the hopes of drawing a land, and then still play Informant, if not Sentinel. Although Sentinel's not going to be great in this matchup necessarily. I could just Skyclave the Lenor Elves, draw a card, hope it's a land. Yeah, I think Skyclave is fine. Also because then next turn I can flicker it with Guardian of Ghirapur. Hit a land, so we can still play Sentinel. We secretly want our opponent to get to 7 Devotion, so that we can exile Karametra as well. For now, Vorinclex getting 2 more forests. So that we can maybe Parting Gust. So our opponent will have a lot of mana, but they'll eventually run out of creatures to play. So that's kind of our hope. So Parting Gust, gifting a fish. Exile Vorinclex. Draw a card. And then could still play Companion to hit our land drop, or we could try Phelia to set that engine up for next turn, which I don't hate. Even though we might not have the best attack with it. Pilgrim is fine. And an Oracle, that's a must answer. So flickering Skyclave would be one way to do that. At least it seems like Phelia still has a reasonable attack, at least trading for one of the opponent's creatures. And our opponent's even attacking. Alright, so can block the fish. Don't know what kind of trick our opponent's representing. Don't hate blocking Knight of Autumn either, unless we want to keep it in play as something we can eventually exile. But I'm kind of scared of cards like Craterhoof Behemoth, so then trading off is still reasonable. And again, I don't think my Sentinel's taxing the opponent since they're mostly a creature deck. And then now Informant could get their last card. And then Phelia attacks. Flickering Skyclave. And then our opponent could just take the trade now, or they could double block as well. Opponent had Galtan Mavrin as their last card, Birds of Paradise coming up. Opponent double blocks. Interestingly, I could touch the Spirit Realm to flicker something, including the opponent's token. I don't hate that idea, just to keep Phelia around. And then Skyclave exiles Oracle, triggers Ketramose once again. And our opponent scoops it up. Yeah, we've successfully removed all their non-land permanents. Alright, and that'll do it. So we get to see our Black-White exiling God in action. And Ketramose is the real deal, especially in 1v1, where you can pretty easily control the game once you get your card draw engine established. Just keep exiling the opponent's stuff while drawing cards, and sooner or later our opponent's gonna run out of resources while we'll still have plenty to work with. So yeah, that's gonna do it for today's gameplay. I wanna thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.